Welcome to the American Institute of Healthcare Professionals videogram on pastoral thanatology, dealing with the dying and their families themselves. And AIHCP offers a 4-year certification in pastoral thanatology. Pastoral thanatology comes from the Greek word Thanos. So thanatology means death or Thanos. So pastoral care mixed with thanatology is care of the dying. Now, when we breach the subject of death with many, it's a very difficult subject to discuss for those who aren't even dying, much less those who are dealing with it. So it's a difficult thing because society sees death as something that is a taboo subject, something that is unhealthy, something that should be avoided at all costs. Death is seen as not part of life, but merely an end of life and something that is bad, something, again, that should be avoided. But in pastoral thanatology, we look to help individuals understand death. We look for families to understand death and to help them be with the individual who is dying in a more healthy and productive way, instead of a closed way, which creates future problems itself. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross extensively worked with the dying. In fact, her 5 stages, which is now utilized also for grief, was originally just meant for those who are dying themselves. And these are things that Kubler-Ross noticed with individuals who are passing away. They went through these various phases upon hearing their death sentence, so to speak, hearing that they have an uncurable type of cancer or a disease that will kill them within months. And some of the things that Kubler-Ross noticed was, first, an outright denial that they're going to die, or denial even from family, knowing that their loved one is going to pass away. The second stage was more emotional. After finally coming to some terms that this is about to occur, death, anger sets in and the individual becomes more upset, maybe with God or life itself, and why now that they are going to have to accept this horrible, horrible death sentence that has been placed upon them. So then comes a more emotional stage, a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, a lot of crying, possibly, between, again, the person who is dying and also the family. Fourth, what they noticed was more of a bargaining phase, Kubler-Ross noticed. And what she had noted was that they begin to bargain and begin to say, well, if I'm going to die, maybe if I can just have 1 extra month, or maybe I can do this a little bit longer. Maybe if a diet was going to be restricted, they said, well, I can handle this death if I'm able to at least eat steak or have ice cream, or if I'm able to at least be able to walk into the final day. Things like this, bargaining, trying to think that they have some sort of control over the illness that is affecting them. And finally came final stage, acceptance, understanding that nothing is going to change. You have no control over it. Death is part of life, and so forth. Now, individuals can, in pastoral thanatology, individuals who are dying, we'll see some become very accepting of this and others that are going to fight against it to the very end. You will also have families who fight against it and they don't want to discuss it, maybe. And this is a problem for this very important part of life. It's a series of events that need to take place during dying, especially if you have a prognosis that tells you and prepares you for this. So the dignity and character of the person dying is important to maintain. The identity of the person becomes more so in their mind as, I'm the person with cancer, or I'm the person that's dying. And these attributes, cancer, dying, begin to consume their identity. And it's important to make the person still feel who they are. Joe is Joe, or Susan is Susan, not by their very disease that is now taking over their entire life or defining what their life might be. So we want to maintain the dignity and character of the person and so forth. And in doing that, sometimes it is addressing death, talking about the issue, not making it the elephant in the room, so to speak, and letting the person feel like themselves again, talking sometimes about the past, talking about their hobbies and their interests, or how a local sports team might be doing. So these things are important in talking and discussing about death and about life itself with an individual who is about to pass away. And unfortunately, many families are unable, emotionally incapable, to be able to properly help their family member go to the next world, so to speak. So communication and dying is extremely important on both sides. In terms of the dying, it's important that their wishes are understood, what they want, and so forth. This is why living will and power of attorneys are important. They allow you, the dying individual, I should say, to be able to communicate their wishes, their desires. So if something does happen, then what they want is in writing, and it's not dictated by a third party or a child that they have, an adult child, a son or a daughter, dictating their final testament and will, so forth. And this can happen to anybody. It's not morbid to think. I mean, it's okay to be prepared and still be optimistic. So if you're younger and you're in a bad car accident, this is why power of attorney is important, and a living will are important to have, because no one is immune to death. Death can strike whenever it wants, like a thief in the night. So we need to be prepared for death, and we need to be ready, not in a morbid sense, but in a practical sense, a realist sense. So living wills, power of attorneys, and wills themselves are excellent ways for the wishes of the dying to be met, even if certain family members might have different ideas of what they want to do. And this brings us to extraordinary and ordinary means of keeping someone alive. Or ordinary means are the basics. So if you're in a car accident, they give you the basic care to keep you alive. It's standard care to keep you alive. Extraordinary means are ways that they keep you alive artificially, maybe on a ventilator, or if you're in a coma, so to speak, and you're brain dead and so forth, you're only being kept alive. The dying individual is only being kept alive through extraordinary measures. And with assisted suicide and all the talk of allowing someone the right to die to avoid suffering, with all of those legal issues that have emerged, most caregivers look at what is an extraordinary means versus an ordinary means. So if an individual is being kept alive artificially, it's not considered to be assisted suicide. It's simply letting someone die naturally, and most importantly, I think, with dignity, with a dignity to their own human nature, to say, let me go. I don't want to have all these tubes and things inside of me. Or if they're laying there without much dignity and they're brain dead, to let them have the dignity to pass away, not be kept in the former shell of a body that they now possess. So extraordinary means, if they are denied, is not assisted suicide. It's not escaping your illness. It's not fighting the illness and trying to go the full 100 yards, so to speak. But it is just a way to allow the dignity and the natural things that occur with death to happen. Also, I think it's important in not just knowing what an individual wants when they die, whether extraordinary, life, saving measures are to be used or not. We also will discover if we communicate and talk with the dying and not be afraid of them, we will be able to find issues that might have been a big problem while they were alive with us. So unresolved issues have a chance to become resolved. If an individual dies with a parent and there's some sort of obstacle that existed in one's life, in their relationship, well, then after the person dies, you sometimes can carry a guilt with you if these issues were not resolved. So it's an important time to resolve issues. And also, the final point that I have is to learn new things. You might learn something about your family that you never knew before, your great-great-grandfather or so, or you might even learn about a hobby that your uncle or your parent that is dying really, really enjoyed, and you have some treasured last moments to be able to share with them. And the moment we throw death out the window and refuse to talk about it, and it becomes the elephant in the room, this is when these things are not able to take place. So it's very important to emphasize communication. Also, in pastoral thanatology, we're not just meeting the physical needs of an individual or the family, the physical needs, we're also meeting emotional needs, spiritual needs, and also improving on a better bedside manner. And this is why many healthcare professionals should become certified in pastoral thanatology. So it's not for chaplains and so forth, but it can also be a useful tool in training healthcare professionals who are very sterile and cold sometimes in looking at death, almost like looking at an individual as a vehicle. Well, the oil needs changed and so forth, or this engine is no good anymore. And they kind of talk in terms of that in regards to the bodily functions. It's just a matter of fact, a day-to-day thing for them. The body is a mechanism. They sometimes only see what is best to keep the mechanism running. Doctors see it as a failure on their part to keep someone alive when that person may be better off finally letting go. So doctors and healthcare professionals benefit from a better bedside manner with pastoral thanatology, because you're not seeing the person as a machine anymore, but you're seeing them as a whole person, soul, mind, and body. And you're looking at those things in terms of suffering, in terms of spiritual needs, and you're able to communicate with the family as well as the individual dying better what's occurring and so forth. So when little time is left, that's when we need, as family members, to come into the picture better and to be able to help those dying. And as those certified in counseling, to be able to give the grief support that is needed, not just during the process, but maybe also after the process. With dying, there are two types of cares that come into play: palliative care, which is for cancer, and hospice. Now, hospice usually has a 6-month period you can be on, and it becomes with a diagnosis from a healthcare professional that you're not going to last longer than 6 months. Hospice, though, looks not to necessarily end life, but to make the remaining bit of your life more comfortable. And this is important because many individuals say, oh no, I'm on hospice, that's a death sentence, I'm giving up. And a lot of families also are hesitant to put their loved ones into hospice because they feel that means they're giving up. And the answer is no, you are not giving up. In fact, you can still try as hard as you can with other holistic measures and things to combine with more conventional medications to try to still find a miracle or be optimistic in a better outcome. But the important thing is you're respecting the dying process, but you're also alleviating suffering. You're making the individual more calm and allowing the individual to die in their home, possibly around family and so forth. And this is the greatest gift you can give your loved one, is a healthy death, a death that is emotionally far better than dying in a sterile hospital and so forth. So those are very important things to remember as well. When these things are not done properly, healthy death and a healthy dying process is not done for the individual, but more so for the family. There can be a lingering issue that occurs where we see an unresolved grief. We see severe guilt, maybe. There could be guilt for the individual for not resolving various issues that had existed, or maybe they feel guilty on how they cared for their loved one. Caregiver burnout falls under this very clearly. Caregiver burnout happens to many individuals who take care of a spouse long-term, usually, or even an adult child who takes care of their parent for a long term. And sometimes they might feel resentful or tired, and they've spent years taking care of this individual. And because the dying process was so gruesome in some particular cases, especially with dementia and so forth, what you see is almost a relief when the individual goes. And this is not because they wanted their loved one to go. They just realized that their loved one is no longer really who they once were. And it's almost looking out for the best of them. It's not giving up before, like assisted suicide would be, but it's taking it as far as it could go and then having relief from that. And many might, again, we go right back up to guilt, feel guilty for feeling that way. And pastoral thanatologists, those type of counselors, need to really focus on those caregivers and say, no, it is okay that you feel relieved to some extent, that you can now go do things that you may have not been able to do before. So I think that's important. Finally, the funeral as a necessary ritual for the family is something that is critical to the healing. And there the family is able to meet together as one to express their common sorrow, their common grief, and commemorate the life of the individual through the funeral and so forth. And this is an excellent time to see what family members are exhibiting signs of depression and so forth, and to help each other, to be there for each other. And then to be able to have the first step of closure through this human ritual known as the funeral. If you're interested in our pastoral thanatology certification that we offer, it's an independent study program. It's online. It offers CE courses that lead to a 4-year certification. And if you would like more information on the program itself, you can go to these 2 links here. The first link is for the Pastoral Thanatology link itself. It'll tell you what Pastoral Thanatology is. It'll go through the various courses, and it'll also let you know what you need to be qualified to enter into it. And usually we accept anyone that is a healthcare professional, behavioral healthcare professional, those in ministry, chaplaincy, and so forth. We also have a request for information link below as well. If you would like to contact the American Institute of Healthcare Professionals for more information on pastoral thanatology, you can at the number 330-652-7776. Again, that number is 330-652-7776. And you can also email us at info@AIHCP.org. Again, that's info@AIHCP.org. If you are suffering with a loved one who's going down this journey of dying, it's a long process, and you're dealing with a lot of difficulty in expressing the dying process, and understanding it properly can help you have a more healthy death process with your loved one. And I think that is very important to have. Your loved ones deserve a healthy dying process. And a lot of the information in pastoral thanatology can help you express death and its meaning in a more healthy way. I'd like to thank you for listening today, and have a great day.